Lay out, give yourself a little time to adjust. Have your legs long, your arms by your sides. So start to carve out a little space in your mind to crawl up inside and look out the window. And of course, it's an opportunity to process differently than usual, to go at a different pace than usual. And it's also an opportunity that you can start to feel things that are unusual. So it's interesting to start by just carving out that space for yourself to have your experience, and then as you look around inside yourself, you can really determine, are you ready? Are you ready to do things differently? Look for new sensations or spontaneous thoughts. And remember, in order to foster this process of feeling new things, thinking new things, having spontaneous moments, you want to be comfortable. So it's not important to hold on to the instructions, to do the right thing. The most important thing is to keep coming back to what's happening with me. How am I doing? What am I experiencing right now? The practice really becomes about the way that you meet yourself and your ability to have a state change and to move into your sensory reality. So bring your attention to the way that you feel the floor under you. And the way some parts of you sink deeply into the floor. Other parts of you meet the floor lightly. And from the places that meet the floor lightly, notice how that gradually becomes a place. Don't touch the floor at all. And again, at the end of the day, what we're really doing here is refining our ability to feel things, to feel subtle differences in sensation. And we practice doing that in these classes. This is the container for practicing it. But it's a skill that your brain is learning. So you don't stop learning once the class is over. It's what makes these lessons, in my opinion, extremely unique and extremely valuable. So now that you've had a few minutes to start to shift how you are, shift the standard that's set when you're operating throughout daily life, interacting with the outside world, to start to interact with your internal world. Start to notice more details about the way that you're laying on the floor, more details about the change of pressure along the line of your spine, from your tailbone, back of your pelvis, curve of your low back, and the section of your spine that has rib pairs in the back, that wrap around in the front. This interesting precarious place where your rib spine meets the base of your neck. And then another interesting precarious place where the top of your neck meets the back of your skull. And notice the way that you feel a relationship between your arms and your spine. Do you feel a relationship? Maybe to you it's more like you have arms over here and then you have a spine over there. And if you sort of spend a little bit more time and pay attention, can you start to kind of look down the tunnel of your arm toward your spine, look down the tunnel from your spine down your arm, and see, can you start to get some sense of a connection, a sensory connection. And then how do your legs meet your spine through your pelvis, through your hips? So start by rolling your head a little bit, left and right. And what do you notice about that? Which way feels more habitual, more favorable, more easy? Which shoulder is more integrated in the movement of your head? Which shoulder is more online when you move your head? And then leave your head in the middle and bend your knees and stand your feet. And stand your feet a little wider than your hips. And you can adjust as we go along. And remember, as we continue through the lesson, you can adjust anything as you need, right? So that you're still engaged in what you're doing. And some things you might choose to do in your imagination. Not necessarily because it's hard or painful, but just because it's interesting. So now start doing a movement with your right knee, tilting it to the left. And notice the speed that you start at. And stay at that speed for a few movements. And then as you continue doing the movement of tilting your right knee to the left, do it at a different speed. Do it several times at a different speed and compare. What's different for you? See if you can approach doing this movement as though this is all you came here to do. This is the entire lesson. And there's really thousands of things that you could notice, thousands of relationships. So what would it be like to pay so much attention to this one little movement that you could be absolutely dazzled for the next 15 minutes? Well, one thing you could do is you could start to pay attention more deliberately to what response you feel in your right hip when you bring your right knee to the left. And as you're paying attention to what kind of response or change in your right hip, compare it to what happens in your left hip. And then see what happens if you can start to expand your attention. So as you're bringing your knee to the left, and you're paying attention to what happens on the back of your pelvis, can you also start to pay attention to what happens to your low back? You pay attention to if there's some part of you that is kind of controlling the movement. Some part of you that's engaged or contracting that doesn't need to be. And then start to investigate what's stopping you from bringing your right knee to rest on your left foot. That's not a challenge, it's a real question. What do you feel stops you? What part of you? I mean, some of you have the flexibility, you could actually do it, right? That's irrelevant. What we're interested in is the super smooth, functional movement, efficient movement, reverse movement. And you can start to think about lengthening your right thigh as you're doing it. And as you're lengthening your right thigh, you can start to think about what changes across your chest, and if there's any change in the position of your shoulders or even your head. And then leave it, lengthen out your legs. And give yourself a moment to notice what's the effect of that. And then your knees and your feet. And have your feet wide again. And gradually start to explore the same movement with your left leg. Just your left leg goes to the right. And of course, none of us are symmetrical, so have no expectations of your poor left leg to need to behave like his sister. Left leg is an independent, autonomous being that has an intimate relationship with pelvis and spine and chest and head. So take your time exploring. What do you find here? What's interesting about this leg? Do you feel more of a connection to your spine on this side? Less of a connection? How does your right leg feel about what you're doing with your left leg? Any protesting? Any power tripping? Is there anyone else that's sort of interfering with left leg's business? Any nosy neighbors? See how you are. And this time, take your right arm and put it up alongside your head on the floor. And now this time, as you're bringing your right knee to the left, just like you were doing before, start to pay attention to what happens to your right shoulder. Make sure that your feet are wide enough apart that your left leg doesn't interfere with the full potential of your right leg. And come back to this idea of kind of lengthening along the front of your right thigh. And see if you can simultaneously feel your right shoulder blade. And notice if there's any sort of sliding or shifting that happens of your right shoulder blade. Maybe think of it like a shortening, so the whole right arm is getting a little shorter. Your shoulder blade is moving more into your spine, into your body. You can even exaggerate a tiny bit what you're feeling happening to your right shoulder blade. And as you're doing that, start to really gently and subtly turn your head to the right. So simultaneously. So slow down enough that you can kind of think of yourself as one uniform mechanism. And as your right leg is slowly going to the left, you can start to feel how your spine turns and changes shape, and how that pulls in your shoulder. And as that happens, your head turns to the right. And then when you come back, see if you feel your shoulder kind of go back to neutral. What happens to the space between your right arm and the right side of your face? And find out if you turn your head to the left as you bring your knee to the left, does it make it easier or harder to move your knee? Let it go and feel yourself resting on the floor again. And for a few moments, bring your attention to your breathing and see how is that. And then stand your feet a little wider than your hips. Just a couple times, tilt your right knee to the left. And then come back, and this time, tilt your right knee to the left, keep it to the left. Left foot is standing, your right knee is to the left. And then have your arms by your sides, and take your right hand and put your palm on your forehead. And keeping your right knee bent to the left as it is, have your right hand across your forehead so your fingers are pointing to the left side of your head. And then start to roll your head left and right. See if you can roll your head left and right and listen down the, let's call it tube of your spine. And listen to your hips and your legs and your right knee. Listen, does your right knee know that you're rolling your head? And then switch arms and roll your head with your left hand instead. And then bring your head to the middle and interlace your fingers behind your head. But keep your right knee over to the left. So feel the effect that has in your back when your right knee is over to the left. And with your fingers interlaced behind your head, point your elbows to the ceiling. And then when you breathe out, see if you can flatten your chest a little bit so that more of your upper back comes in contact with the floor. And peel your head a little bit away from the floor. And then bring your head back down again. And see if you can tell what part of your back and what part of your hip you lean on when you lift your head. And then leave all that, lengthen yourself out, take a little rest in your back. And then bend your knees and stand your feet and have your feet wider than your knees. And bring your left arm up alongside your head, your right arm down by your side. And have your left arm comfortably straight. Make sure you're not straining your wrist or your hand. Comfortably straight, left arm. And gradually start to tilt your left knee to the right and come back. And pay attention, how permissive is the right side of you to this movement of your knee? Is the right side of you that you're laying on, does it adapt at all to this change of your leg? And see if you can start to pay attention to the shape of the dome of your ribs on the left and the right. See if you can tell the difference in the shape of the dome on the right side and the dome on the left side as you bring your left knee to the right. And again, if you go slow enough, you might be able to sense more clearly what stops your knee from just coming in a very delicate, easy, controlled way all the way down to the floor. How far up yourself can you sense a continuum? And now gradually start to rotate your head in the direction of your left arm simultaneously as you're tilting your leg to the right. So what effect does it have when your head turns towards your arm? A couple times, all of you go half the speed that you're going right now. With this idea that the tilting of your leg is this endless continuum. For the rest of class, all you're going to do is tilt your leg gradually. And when does your leg become your hip? And when does your hip become your back? When does your back become your shoulders, your neck, your arm, and your head? And when that gets clearer in your sensing, then find out what's different about turning your head to the right when you want to bring your knee to the right. And now the next time that your left knee is tilted to the right, keep it there. And put your left hand on your forehead. And start to roll your head back and forth. Keep your knee bent to the right. So what part of your spine is turned to the right? And what part of your spine are you turning to the left? What's the junction? And then switch your hands and roll your head a bit with your right hand. pause with that for a moment. Bring your legs down if you like. Roll your head out a little bit, right and left. And stand your feet. Let your left knee go to the right. Keep it to the right. And interlace your fingers behind your head. And with your pelvis tilted and your low back sort of arched a bit as it is, see how it is to flatten your chest enough to peel your head out and lower your head back down. What do you lean on? Parts of your ribs in the back go down. What changes about your low back? What changes with your shoulders? And then bring your head down, bring your arms down, bring your knees back to the middle. And then alternate. Tilt your right knee to the left and come back. And then tilt your left knee to the right and come back. And as you're going, pay attention to your shoulder blades. How do they shift their position forward? And then pause for a moment and prop yourself up on your elbows and your forearms. Your head is lifted and you're leaning back like you're sitting at the beach or something. And if that's a no-go, then you can continue to lay on your back. So your feet are, yes, everything's the same. Your feet are still standing like they are. Yeah, except now you're propped up on your elbows. With your elbows underneath you. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And then in this situation, close your eyes and see how is it to bring your right knee to the left. And make sure your legs are wide enough apart that that's possible. And now something is very different here. Your shoulders are fixed. And so find out when you move your knee, is your chest willing to adapt even if your shoulder is fixed? What does your chest do when you bring your right knee to the left? And then try it the other way. Let the right guy be quiet. Bring the left guy to the right. Go back and forth a few times. So you can lengthen each thigh away from you as you bring the knee down. And then rest on your back. And maybe bring your knees into your chest, and then very lightly rock your weight more to one side of your back and the other side of your back. Make sure you're not holding your breath. And then bring it down. Take a few moments to bring your attention back to your breathing. And then bend your knees, stand your feet, have your legs fairly wide apart. And cross your right thigh over your left thigh. And then reach your left arm up long, alongside your head. And very gradually start to tilt both of your legs to the right and come back. And again, go slow enough that you can feel what happens. Right? The weight of your legs go to the right, so the weight of your hips goes more onto the right hip. Then what happens in this mysterious area between your hips and your head. See if you can at least feel where along yourself you hit a roadblock. And then gradually, actually stop for a second, keep your legs crossed. I want to be super clear about this, because if you really pay attention in this specific way, it's very different from if it's just kind of an exercise. So the instruction is that this time, as you bring your legs to the right, simultaneously, right, you're going to lengthen your left arm, have equal parts pulling down and away of your legs and pulling up and away of your arm, equal parts, so that you can really start to feel where the junction is between those two opposing movements. Then, when you come back, there has to be a recalibration or a reset. So check that you're doing it so that you can come back with the same ease. So very gradually lengthening your legs away from you as you're lengthening your arm away from you. As you continue, pay attention to what's happening with your head. And start to play with deliberately turning your head toward your arm and tilting it slightly so that you look towards your left hand. Just the amount that you can do without any strain in your neck. But see what happens to that junction. Some parts of you are going down and away, some parts of you are going up and away. And then you add in, turn your head to the left and tilt your head, sliding along the floor. You kind of scratch your head or your hair along the floor so that your nose starts to look in the direction of your left hand. And then again, what's really key is when you come back, it's a reset. And then do it a few times with your head going to the right as you're lengthening your left arm. So what does that ask of your neck? If you don't get ambitious and need it to be a certain way, and then keep your legs like this, come back to the middle, but switch your arms. And continue bringing your legs to the right as you are, but now start to lengthen your right arm as you bring your legs to the right. What happens if you don't do anything in particular with your head, but you also check that your head is listening and your neck is listening to the changes in your spine? These two, it's another image could be kind of like, let's see, if you were to twist a towel and you're pulling the towel in two different directions. So you're twisting your legs down and away, and you're twisting your arm up and away. It might be interesting to use your belly, it might be interesting to use your breathing. Play with where you look as you do it. From time to time, check on your jaw. You can tell by looking at the shadows I can see in your faces. Some of you are accidentally fixing your jaw. So it might be useful to let your tongue be thick, or even stick your tongue a little bit forward between your teeth. Let it hang out a little bit and see what happens. And then unwind yourself and lengthen yourself out. This is the next layer, the next version of yourself that you find. And then come back and switch the crossing of your legs. Your left is over your right. Your right foot is standing somewhere that you feel supported. And bring your right arm up alongside your head. And start curiously. It's a completely different situation on this side. So as you bring your legs to the left, first just see how that is. How do your ribs change shape on one side and the other side? What do you lean on and what peels away from the floor? And be careful of getting into autopilot, right? You just feel a thing and you do it repetitively. That's an exercise class. So if you find yourself getting into a repeat mode, just take a rest. Jump out of the lesson for a bit. And then come back when you feel refreshed and curious. Oh, let me try this a little differently. Let me see how that feels. Gradually start adding in lengthening your right arm simultaneously. Again, the simultaneity of it is really significant. You reach from the same place in your back down through your legs and up through your shoulder and your arm. Play with the options for your head. See if you can play with the options of your head without losing sight of this junction. This junction where the lower part of you does one thing, the upper part of you does the other thing, but it's happening at the same place. And your head could move independently or integratedly with those two other movements. You see what happens. And then switch arms. And what happens when you lengthen your left arm as you bring your legs to the left? So you can really get to know your ribs, you know? What's different about how they behave on one side and the other side? Bring all your parts down. And again, especially the way that you experience yourself. And again, the cool part is that regardless of what you're cognitively processing, your sensory motor system is aware beyond what your cognitive brain is aware of. So as you start to integrate more of your ribs, the sensation of your rib touching the floor, moving away from the floor, muscles adjusting, your sensory motor system recognizes that and adds it to the image that you have of yourself. Now this time sit up with your feet standing. Your hands can be on the floor behind you. Your feet are standing and your legs are wide apart. And close your eyes. And gradually start to bring your right knee to the left. Easily, gradually come back. And then bring your left knee to the right. And go back and forth, spend a little time with this, see what's different. And play with your shoulders a little bit. Notice that the weight of your fingers pointing influences the position of your shoulder blades. So investigate. Is it easier for you to tilt your legs depending on the angle that you have in your hands? And then pause in the middle for a moment in the variation of your arms that feels the easiest. And a few times do a movement of dropping your face like you're going to look at your belly button and start to round your upper back and round your middle back and round your lower back. And then do the opposite. Start to lift your face a little bit toward the ceiling and lift your spine up between your shoulders and lift your back a little bit forward. Lift your belly forward. Yeah. Remember when you're on your back and you're lifting your head? We all have this damn habit. When you're dropping your head, you've got to soften your chest bone. Usually what we end up doing is we harden our chest in order to bend our head. So when you bring your head forward, see if you can soften your chest bone. And it's a funny thing because your shoulders are fixed, so it's tricky. Right? You have to learn how to adjust your ribs and your upper spine independent of your shoulders. It's huge. Right? So don't force it. I would say all of you could probably do less than what you're doing right now. It might help it be a little more gentle and clear. So there's some clenching happening. So let's see if we can take out the clenching. That's it. And as you're moving your upper back, your lower back's listening, and your pelvis is listening. And you might notice that your legs are responding. Are you fixing your legs in a particular way? Now pause a moment. You can lay down or sit, whatever you want to do. Just give yourself a time out for a second. And then come back one more time with your feet standing, and your legs wide apart, and your arms on the floor behind you, your hands on the floor behind you. And now this time I'll explain it to you. And then you can start, maybe visualize it at first. This time you're going to go back to tilting one leg then the other leg. But when you tilt one knee forward and down, when you tilt one knee forward and down, you're going to do that rounding. Your head will drop and you're going to pay attention to your upper back and your chest. And then when you bring your legs back to neutral, you'll come back to neutral with your spine. Maybe you can lift your spine a little bit. And then when your other knee comes down, then you round your spine. And so you breathe out and you round, and you soften your breastbone, you soften your upper back, and your knee goes down. And you just listen to what your shoulders need to do to allow that. And then you come back up to neutral, take a breath in, let your belly fill forward. And then as you breathe out, let your head kind of bow forward, let your upper back round, let your other knee come down. That's it. Down on your back, bring your legs, arms down by your side. Shift your attention back to how your breathing is. Pay attention to the residue of your experience. Bend your knees and your feet wide apart again. And just so you can see for yourself if there's anything that's changed for you over the course of the lesson. The very first instruction was just your right leg, just bring it to the left toward the floor by your left foot and come back. And just seeing how that is. How is that different from the first time you did it? How much of your whole self do you feel involved in that movement? Compare it to how it is to keep the right foot standing and bring the left leg to the right several times. And it's the same thing. This idea of relationship. Is it just my legs over there doing that thing and I'm up here doing this thing? Is there a little bit more of a sense of a continuum? And leave it and give yourself a nice rest. Gradually transition on your own to roll over, sit up, stand up, walk around.